All right, COSA 251. So today we're completing an exercise in the Microsoft Learn lesson here. It's called Create Visual Calculations in Power BI Desktop. So what we're looking at here is a report, and we're going to be creating visual calculations using DAX. DAX stands for Data Analysis Expressions. So DAX allows us to use formulas, right? So if you're familiar with Excel, you've seen this structure before. So we're going to create several visual calculations, the types of visual calculations that are comparisons. So we're going to be looking at previous data and comparing it to other data. And then we're also going to set up some parameters within our visual calculations. All right, so to get started, you have to open up your Power BI desktop copy, right? Because we're not performing this particular exercise inside of the virtual environment. You'll be doing that on your own desktop copy. If you do not have Power BI on your system, you can open up the Citrix environment that does have Power BI. All right, so once you've opened up your instructions, you're also given a URL to go to, right? So make sure that you copy that URL into your browser and that you download and then extract the file that you'll need to begin, which in our case is the O5B Starter Sales Analysis PBIX file. All right, so the first thing that we're doing here is in our first task, we are creating a bar chart. We want to show the sales amount, the total product cost, and profit by fiscal year with comparison metrics as tooltips. All right, so that's going to be a neat sort of thing that we can do. We can add, when a person hovers their mouse over a particular visual, we can add the tooltip that gives them even more information. All right, so the first thing that we're asked to do here in number one is in the visualizations pane, right? Here's our visualizations pane. Select the clustered bar chart visual type. All right, so we're going to go over to our bar chart. Here's our clustered bar chart. We're going to go ahead and click on that, and it's going to put that template onto our screen there. And it says in number two, in the data pane, here's our data pane, from inside the date table, drag the year field. So I'm going to go in this, open this up, drag the year field into the y-axis well area. All right, so we're looking at our year field. Here it is, and we're dragging it over into our y-axis. So here is our area that we're talking about here. We're going to drag it into the y-axis. All right, so we've got our year. We're dragging it over to our y-axis. There it is. All right, so we look at our chart here, and there's not much to look at yet, right? Because that's only one of the two data sets that we need here. So we go on to number 3. It says drag the sales and cost fields from the sales table into the x-axis. All right, so we're going to go over to our sales. We're going to open that up, and we're going to drag them over into our x-axis. So here's my x-axis for sales, and here's my cost. I'm going to drag that over as well. So I'll put it right underneath my sum of sales. Okay, so I've got my bar chart here, and it's showing 3 years, sum of sales and sum of cost, right, in my clustered bar chart. And then we get a little note that reminds us, when you added sales and cost to the visual, the sum of each field was automatically calculated, right? And we do have that. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger so we can see more of it on the screen there. Okay, now it asks us to sort this information, right, by a specific one of these fields. So we're sorting the resulting bar chart by year, ascending by using the three-dot menu and selecting year, followed by sort ascending. So in essence, what we're going to do is we're going to use these 3 little more options dots here. We're going to open that up, and we're going to sort. So when we go to sort our axis, first we have to tell it which axis we wanted to sort by, right? So we're going to say not sum of sales, but year instead, right? And then we'll go ahead and say, once we've got the year selected, we want to make this be in ascending order. So if you notice on the screen now, it goes from 2019 to 18. We're going to go from smallest to biggest, so it's going to go with 18, 19, and 20. All right, so we can see we have increasing sum of sales there, but also some increasing costs. Okay, you now have a bar chart showing the sum of sales and sum of costs by year sorted chronologically. So that was pretty easy to do, right? We just go into our more options there. But I haven't really done much, right, in the way of comparison. All right, well, let's see. The next set of instructions ask us to add calculations. All right, so notice that we are indeed in our report. right? So we're not in the model where we include measures. In the report, we can just add visual calculations right here from the screen. Okay, with number one, it says, with the bar chart selected, select new visual calculation in the ribbon. How do I know the bar chart is selected? Well, because we've got these little sizing handles there. I'm going to go over to my home tab. There's in the calculations group, I've got new visual calculation. I'm just going to go ahead and press on the button at the top there. And it brings up now this new screen that looks like the formula bar of Excel, right? And it is intended to look like that. So we're looking at here, it says the visual calculations edit window opens. This is the edit window that we're talking about here. In the formula bar above the visual matrix, enter the following expression and then enter to commit the calculation. All right, so what do we want to do here? Well, essentially, we want to figure out what the profit is, right? So we've got the cost of the product, we've got the sales of the product. Now we want to figure out profit. So you'll remember that we did this in a previous exercise, right? In the previous lesson, but we did it as a measure. Now we're going to do it right here from the visual calculation. So here we are, and we're going to, instead of calculation here, we're going to tell Power BI what it is that we want to call this new column, and we're going to call it profit. So it was already selected. I just typed right over it. And just like you have the idea in Excel that when you want to start a calculation, you type the equal sign, we're going to do the same thing here in Power BI. We're going to type in the equal sign to start our calculation. What we want to select is the sum of sales. So I'm just going to start off by typing in my little bracket there. And when I do that, it takes into account the fields, the tables that I could use here. One of them is indeed the sum of sales. Got it. So I'm going to subtract from that. So I'm going to put in my subtraction symbol, the sum of the cost. All right, so I'm going to, again, start off with my bracket here. And this is, oh, these are the tables that you could pull from, right, that you could use. How does it know that these are the tables that I could use? Well, because they're in my well area, right? I pulled them over here. Okay, so I've got my sum of cost. Got it. And then it tells me to commit to that particular expression. I'm going to click on the little green commit check mark here. And oh, look at that. Now we get right in our visual here, a brand new bar, right? So this one has to do with profit. So it looks like in 2018, I had a little bit of profit. Ooh, look at that 2019. I had a lot more profit, but then something happened, something went askew in 2020, right? Well, if we look here at initially, we can see that we had a lot of cost in 2020, more cost than we had sales. Okay, so that's kind of a nice way to look at that. Let's go ahead and keep going here. It tells you in number 3, confirm you now see a profit column, and we do, it's that orange one there, on the visual matrix at the bottom of the screen. All right, well, now we're talking about the visual matrix. This is the one that it's talking about here. We know that a matrix looks like a table, and there's our profit. Okay, got it. So we're looking here at the profit for 2018, 19, 20, and then the total. Okay, in number 4, we're looking at now the profit portion. It says expand the menu under new visual calculations and select versus previous from the template options. All right, so we're looking here at profit, right? But we can't really see here, right, in this visual matrix, a comparison of the profits, right? We had to kind of analyze each one independently. We can use the versus previous calculation to figure out, based on a previous data point, what's the difference? Okay, so we're going to go over to our visual calculation one more time, but now we're going to select one of the templates. So instead of the little button, we're going to click on the little drop-down arrow, and we're going to go over to our versus previous. There it is, versus previous. Got it. Look at that. It brings up a brand new column here, but it also includes more information here in the arguments formula bar. Okay, so versus previous compares a value to a preceding value, right? So we've got to have an initial value to compare it to. So we see the profit compared to the previous value for year. All right, got it. I'm looking at my information here, right? But I'm not seeing any numbers pop up here. And that's because we haven't yet told it what to compare. So we're looking at number 1. It says in the formula bar, replace the field placeholder with profit, right? So in the 2 places where I see this field here, I'm going to take the first initial profit, right? So I'm going to type in profit here. And we remember that we looked at profit here as a visual calculation. And then I want to compare it to the previous profit field. So I'm just going to go ahead and type it in, profit. There it is. I'm going to select it. Okay, so I've got profit and I've got profit, and then I'll go ahead and click on my commit, and I get a brand new column here, right? So versus previous. Okay, so I'm looking at the number previous to this number. I look at my little what looks to be like a purple brand new bar here versus previous. All right, so as I'm looking at this, the numbers do change, right? I still have the same total here, right? So what am I really comparing here? What types of versus previous am I really comparing here? Well, let's keep looking at some of these visual calculations and what they mean. So we're looking at now, number 2, it says select running sum from the templates menu and replace the field placeholder with profit and commit the calculation. All right, so before we do number 2, let's talk about running sum. So when you are using the running sum calculation, it calculates the sum of values, right? All of the sum of values, adding the current value to the preceding values. So we see the total of current and previous years, right? So it's talking about each one of the quadrants that we're measuring is going to add them up. It's going to give us a running sum. Okay, let's go ahead and try that. So we've got here our profit, our versus previous. We're going to get into the running sum now. We're going to go into our visual calculation into our templates, and we're just going to choose the running sum. There it is. Okay, so there's no values here because I haven't told it which fields to look at. So I've selected my running sum from the templates menu, and now I'm going to replace this field here with profit, right? I want to see a running sum of the profits that we're talking about. So I'll select it right from the screen, and I'll commit to it. And now I see, okay, so I still have the same total, which makes sense, right? And I'm looking here at these numbers, the running sum of my profits. Okay. So that's interesting, right? Look at this little this little pink bar here. And as we're looking at the running sum of profit, right, it's giving us what looks to be very close here to other values. All right. Well, so far, we're making comparisons to our numbers, right? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go forward to number 1. It says select moving average from the templates menu and replace the field placeholder with profit and the window size placeholder with 2. Okay, so what are we doing now? We're going to be using the moving average, right, which calculates an average of a set of values in a given window by dividing the sum of the values by the size of the windows. All right, so we know that averages, we add and then divide by how many we have here, but we're giving it something a little different here. We're giving it the size of the window. And we're saying the size of this window, the size of the comparisons, the things that I want you to compare is just 2. So we are calculating the average of 2 consecutive values. In this example, the values are yearly profits, so we see the moving average for 2019 is the average of the profits for 2018 and 2019. So in essence here, we really only have 2 values that we can look at, right? 19 and 20. Okay, let's go ahead and put those up here. So I'm going to go up into my visual calculation and choose moving average from there. And here's my expression, and I want to change the field here to be profit, right? So I'm going to delete the one I don't want and select the one I do want. But remember, you've got to give it a window size. We have to tell it how many things we wanted to give it an average for. In this case, it's just 2 values. All right, got it. And it says you should now have the following setup. Well, first I have to commit to this particular formula. I'm going to go and click on commit. And it gives me a brand new number here of moving average. So now I've got a different color purple here, and it's giving me an average. But notice that 2018, right, all of these are the same. Why? Because there's nothing to compare 2018 to, right? But in 2019 and 2020, we definitely have values to compare with. So we've got some different sort of movements here with these bars. All right, so take a moment to compare your visual with the visual in the instructions, right? And it should be right on. All right, and then take a moment to make sure that your matrix here at the bottom, right, has the same numbers as your instructions, right? And so far, so good. We've got this information and we've got lots of things that we're comparing here. Okay, So if everything is good, go forward. We're looking at number one, right? So we've moved into a new type of calculation here. In this case, we're just going to be doing some things all at once. It says number one, under the x-axis well area. All right, so we're looking here now in the well area. We've got all these different things that we have just created, right? So we created a profit column, a versus previous, a running sum, and a moving average, right? All different types of calculations. They are comparative ones, right? That's what we're looking for, a comparison of values here. And so it tells us that you've created all these things and you want them available, but you don't want to see them in this bar chart. So what are we going to do about that? It says under the x-axis well area, select the visibility icon of the following fields to hide them from the visual. So we're going to go over to our sum of sales and we're just going to click on our little I, right? And it goes away. Then we'll take off sum of cost and we'll take off profit. And what does that do? It leaves us with these visuals here that show us the versus previous, right? So we don't have the original numbers there. We're just looking at the comparison versus the previous value, right? So 2018, 19, look at 2020, right? Look at that. That one's going into the negative there. We've got the running sum, right? And then we've got the moving average that are indeed available to us. All right, so the fields and the calculations that you hid, they're no longer on the visual, but you could always bring them back, right? If we wanted to click on profit, we could bring that back up. But in this case, we don't want to see that. We just want to see the comparison values. Okay, that was pretty easy. Going on to the next number one. It says in the visualizations pane, drag running sum and moving average to the tooltips area. All right, so it's talking about the well area here, right? So we're talking about this region here. And so I do want that information, right? The running sum, I created the calculation. The moving average, I created the calculation, right? And I want them to be in the tooltips. So not so much in the visual, but available in the tooltips, right? Because we want to make our visuals not have too much information, but we want that information to be available for someone who looks for it. Okay, so we're going to take our running sum. Here it is here. And we're going to move it over into our tooltips area. So I'm just going to take it and drag and drop it. There it is. And I'm also going to take my moving average and I'm going to take it and drag and drop it. And there it is, right? And now on my screen, all I see here is that one comparison, right? I've got one bar chart available for each one of the years, but if I put my mouse over any of those values, I get to see, look at that, versus previous, running sum, moving average, right? And then the year. It gives you that information right in the tooltip. So again, you free up the space on this visual, right? You don't make it too polluted. There's not so much information on there, but I do indeed have those visual calculations available. Okay. Moving forward, it tells you you now have a bar chart with the following values: sum of sales, sum of cost, profit, and profit versus previous with tooltips for profit running sum and profit moving average. All right, great job.